What's good, everybody? My name is Alckemy and welcome to How to Byte. This is episode 5 and today we're going to be taking inspiration from Frequent with this bass. Now, there is a different disclaimer today. Even though I'm not Frequent and you're not Frequent, the truth is that I've actually taken lessons from Nolan and he is an awesome person, and I would highly recommend that instead of watching this video, you should probably go to frequent/audio.com and go take lessons with him. That being said, today's bass is going to be inspired from the tutorials that he already has, just because we'll go pay him for the information. Don't just get it from me. The key components to this are pretty simple. It's actually just a combination of reusing the same tools. So you distort, you filter, then you compress, then you distort, then you filter, compress enough times until you get something that's really cool. So with that out of the way, be sure to like and subscribe if you guys like this particular series. Let's figure out how this bass was made. So typically Frequent has used this formula with just the sine bass, and I actually think that's a great place to start. However, if you're kind of familiar with this process, then you can kind of upgrade into something that might be a little bit more of an FM bass. So it sounds like this. And you can scan along the wavetable and change the timbre, but you're looking for something that has a little bit more harmonics. Starting from this is great because you can already hop into filtering, or you can apply just a touch of distortion and already get really large pieces of movement. But instead of just going, sine wave, distortion, 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 sometimes having some different sets of unique harmonics can be a good next step. So I've actually layered this with another source of the same sound, except we've high passed it and added some movement to a single LFO kind of like wave form. And that has a multi-stage envelope, and we'll touch on this in here in just a second, but everything is mapped to this. So we've got a bandpass filter that's going to sweep the low mids. You're not really going to be able to tell the difference until we start to apply this stuff over here, but just kind of keep that in your pocket. So after that, we've got a little bit of distortion, and then we've got a little bit of noise. And so far our sound is like this. Nothing too fancy. We do also have a sine wave that's coming out directly, and it is going through all the processing and stuff, but we just kind of wanted a clean source to start with. Make sure that you also have a limiter on here because things are going to get loud here in just a sec. We're going to skip the snap heap and we're going to go straight into filtering. And this is just kind of the same thing where I've got some movement going on here to try to start to introduce vowel tones. And that's something that I've covered on in several videos in the past, so you can go and watch that stuff. But the basics of it is that because you're doing boosting and cutting within an EQ before you send it into distortion, you can sometimes start to shape vowel tones with it. So this is what this sounds like. You can kind of hear how it kind of sounds like an owl. Now we have another filter that's coming on after this, and this is a notch that's going in opposition. And then we are going to apply some distortion to it. And from this point, you can already hear that it's starting to shape up, and that's kind of like the name of the game. So we can do the same thing with some more filtering. This time we're going to use a low pass filter. And then we're just going to send it through some more distortion. Next up, we are going to apply some compression, and don't worry about the settings. Don't worry about what everything is, because you shouldn't be trying to copy this bass in the first place. It's just a matter of understanding how you can rinse and repeat and then use that as a basis to explore. So the next piece is the compressor. And then from here, it's just kind of a rinse and repeat. We've got another notch. Then we have another filter that's doing a low pass. Then more distortion. Then we have some compression. And again, more filtering. More filtering. Distortion. Compression. More filtering. And this is kind of controlling most of the sound at the end. And so from here, we are going to push everything up with some upwards compression and some light downwards compression. Then from here, it's kind of just shaping that and trying to make that as big as possible. So there's only a couple of things on here. We have a frequency shifter and another filter that's doing another boost. can see here that this cutoff is mapped to a macro, so that way we can apply it to the same LFO. And then from there, we are boosting up the high end twice. So there's some high end we're pushing up in this way. Then what we're actually doing is using this dynamics here to push this up even more. And you can see here that it adds quite a bit to the high end and a little bit of crunch. So we just have a limiter right here. And if you want to call it and just move within phase plant, you can do that. But you have a couple more options on the outside of this. So for one, you can use a clipper and just push this up a bit. The second thing that you can do is use some actual glue compression, especially if you're in Ableton where it has the soft clip. Now it works a little bit differently, but it will still give you some cool tones without making the sound go into peaking. Still sounds cool to me either way. So now that you actually have something like this, one thing that I want to talk about, and this isn't really that important, it's just a pitch bend envelope, and you can apply that to any bass to make it a downbeat. But this is really where the magic happens, because once you have all of this stuff set up to a parameter, all you have to do is come back into this and start to change the LFO. And that gives you some really cool variation. And so you can see from here that once you have all this, it's really powerful to use phase plant in that way, and Serum or whatever it is that you want to use for this in particular. But having everything mapped to a single instance like that will allow you to kind of get really interesting movement. You can always add some reverb on top of this to kind of make everything a little bit wider. You can also stack the synths and stuff. You can also add different pitch automation, or pitch modulation rather, with a different LFO to try to find some other kind of cool movements. So from there, you could see that just by moving this and setting this to the pitch as well, then you can also get like really cool whips and stuff in that way. There's a lot of different ways to process this even further and kind of make it twist and stuff, but I think that this is a great bass to actually start with, especially if you're new to designing neuro basses and whatnot, because it's a great way to teach you about the relationship between filtering, distorting, and compression in general. So that's pretty much it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you like this series and want to see more. Let me know in the comments who else you would like to see, and do me a favor, hit up Nolan at frequent-audio.com, sign up for a lesson, tell him that I sent you, and give him my thanks for everything that he's done for myself and for the community. Thank you guys. I'll see you in the next one.